Hi, I'm Alan Sens, and I'm sitting outside the International House at the University of British Columbia. Welcome to the Global Politics Instructional Video Series. In this series, we're looking at a number of key concepts in the study of international relations and global politics. Today, we're looking at anarchy. Now, anarchy is important because anarchy is one of the core concepts in the theory of political realism. Realists argue that the way global politics are and the way global politics happens is all because it's an international anarchy. That is to say, the international system is anarchic. And realists argue that this fundamentally determines the character of global politics, historically, today, and in the future. So, let's see what they mean.
Anarchy. Now, when we think of anarchy, often what comes up first is the idea of anarchism. And anarchists, of course, are relevant in some contexts, but we're not really interested in them right now. We're actually focused on global politics. So, I'm going to draw an international system, and I'm going to populate it with some states. And I'll draw some very powerful states, and some less powerful states, and some even less powerful states. Now, realists argue that this system is anarchic. That is to say, it is characterized by anarchy, and they make that claim for two reasons. First, there is no central authority in this system. And what that really means is there's no world government. There's no world government to establish rules, establish laws, or provide protection for anyone in the system. The second reason this system is anarchic is that there is no world police force. And as a result, there's no force to actually enforce rules or laws in this system. Now, realists argue there's a number of consequences to this. The first consequence is that states are very insecure in an anarchic environment, and as a result, they are very concerned, obsessed, in fact, with survival, and that is their first and ultimate priority. Second, realists argue that in this anarchic system, states can really only rely on themselves for their own security. And realists call this a self-help system. And there's really only two ways states can help themselves to secure themselves against any threats, and that's to increase their own military power or to form alliances. Third, realists argue that in an anarchic system, it's extremely difficult to trust anyone. So trust is difficult. And as a result, it's very difficult to promote cooperation. Everyone in the system is worried about their own self-interests. There's a lot of conflict in the system because it's so difficult to establish long-term patterns of cooperation with others in an anarchic environment. So realists argue that this anarchic structure makes states act the way they do. This system, this anarchic system, determines the behavior of states. And one of the examples that realists use to illustrate this, and we'll talk about it here because it's a very good example, is something called the security dilemma. And the whole idea here is when states look out into the international system, and I'll just label these three more powerful states in the system, A, B, and C. When states look out into the system, they feel insecure. So let's take state A. It looks into the system and feels it's insecure. There's no central authority. There's no police force. It needs to depend on itself for its own security. Trust is difficult. It wants to survive. And so as a result, it will build up its military power. And I'll just draw a little symbol there to expressed that. And what state A is really doing is it's looking out in the system and saying, you know, we don't have any aggressive intent, we don't want to attack anybody, but we can't trust anyone either, and we need to ensure our own security, so we're going to build up our military to defend ourselves. Now, state B looks at that and asks the question, why did state A do that? Why did they increase their military? And certainly they realized that we have no aggressive intent towards them, so perhaps they're building up their military in order to attack us. We can't take that chance. It's a self-help system, so we better build up our own military in response. State A then looks to that effort by State B to build up its military and asks the question, now why did they do that? Surely they knew we have no aggressive intent towards them. We were building up our military to defend ourselves, but then they go up and build their military up. Why did they do that? Maybe they're planning to attack us. It's a self-help system. So we better build up our military a little bit more in order to defend ourselves against State B. State B then looks at that and goes, why did they do that? We increased our military just to defend ourselves, and now they've gone and increased their military some more. We better do the same. And then State A responds, State B responds, and before you know it, you've got an arms race between State A and State B. Now, meanwhile, State C is looking at this and going, what's going on? These two countries are vastly increasing their military power. We better do the same in case they're planning to attack us. And before you know it, you've got an arms race that's extended throughout the system. And an arms race is a particularly extreme form or virulent example of the security dilemma. And of course, the dilemma here is that in their efforts to ensure their own security, these states have now created an environment which is much more insecure than it was before. I mean, they're certainly no more secure than they were before, and arguably they're even less secure because this system is now much more hostile, much more filled with suspicion and distrust, and could even lead to war. So realists make the argument through the security dilemma as one example of how anarchy affects global politics. The nature of the system, the character of the system, actually affects the behavior of states. And it does so in a way that realists argue has examples throughout history.
So that was the concept of anarchy. Now, not everyone believes that realists are right when they describe the world as anarchic. Most other theories have very different takes on how you would describe the international system and its fundamental characteristics. But clearly, if we do want to try to understand global politics, realists do have a lot to tell us, and anarchy is one of the main contributions they make to this discussion. I hope you enjoyed this video. Join me next time.